Do you remember 2025? Do you remember the cute little games we played back then? Tiny rodent fellas completing P-cross puzzles to furnish their homes. Heartfelt stories about characters who are somehow pretty endearing despite being half ahead. I mean, ignore all the other stuff that doesn't help prove my point, and then compare those to what 2026 has offered so far. Reality-bending machines and bloodthirsty roots that consume everything in their path. At least it's not going to get any weirder than that, right? Oh. Strange Scaffold are a development team which like to live up to their name. The, strange part, I mean. I don't know that they've made any games about scaffolding just yet. They're perhaps best known for the unsettling mono-buttoned Clickolding, but the rest of their catalogue is equally out there, from horror fantasy kidnapping simulator Life Eater to Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator, Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator. And it's that last one from which, surprisingly enough, today's game has spun off, though evidently Strange Scaffold thought trading organs was a touch too mild, as they've eschewed the organ part from the title like a sea cucumber, look it up, and replaced it with babies. Before you get too worried, I should explain that you're not actually trading the babies themselves, but rather stock in their simulated lives. What do you mean that doesn't explain anything at all? Right, fine. When you start this stock trading roguelike, you'll be informed that in the year 3478, a company called FutureSee has developed terminals that allow people to, effectively, see into the future. It's not just the game that's named incredibly literally. Speculative markets no longer exist, because anyone can just look up exactly what will happen to a company. The only thing that those terminals can't predict are the lives of babies, what with their infinite potential. So, capitalism being capitalism, that's what the stock market turns to. And with you playing as any one of a handful of various money-grubbing aliens, that's where you'll turn as well. You pick a baby and the simulation of its life begins. You can buy stocks in it as you please. When something good happens to it, their value will go up, and when something bad happens to it, their value will go down. When its simulated life ends, they will drop to zero. Buy low, sell high, and make sure you're not holding when they die. Right at the start of the game, you've got no real way to make an informed decision, you're just going entirely on vibes. But you quickly unlock a selection of consultants who can give you helpful tips. That can be anything from the average share price of a baby to an estimation of how long it will live for, but it's usually something you can use to give yourself a significant trading advantage, at the cost of a commission percentage. There are a couple of other ways to make money. Firstly, the heavily advertised baby shorting mechanic. But if you're as financially illiterate as I am and you haven't watched that movie, it might take you a little while to get your head around exactly how shorting a stock actually works. Even once you do kind of understand it, I can tell you from experience that you might still struggle to pull any off successfully. For me, they ended up being by far and away my least used money-making scheme, and I'm fairly certain one that lost me a lot more money than they ever made. Finally, each of the day's 4 available babies will usually have a side bet option where you can gamble a few thousand credits on various outcomes. Those are things like whether a specific event will happen to it during its lifetime, or if its value will hit a particular high or low. Those previously mentioned consultants can help a lot with these too. If, for example, you already know that a baby's average value is going to be somewhere between 550 and 600,000 credits, it seems pretty likely that the value will, at some point, reach 610,000 credits. As long as you've got the funds, it can be a nice little earner, and earning is, unsurprisingly, the main point of this game. There are currently 6 characters to pick from, though that number will be increasing in the very near future, more on that later, and for each of those characters you've got 3 targets to aim for, offering a bronze, silver, and gold trophy. I would say this is probably my first point of contention with the game in its current state. Each campaign is a set number of days, but there's no option, as far as I could tell, to close up shop a couple of days early. That means on a few occasions I'd have already earned that gold trophy and had nothing to do for the remaining days. There's no real incentive to try and make even more. In fact, you're encouraged not to, as doing so would risk losing what you've got and dropping below the gold trophy threshold. Instead, you sort of meander through the rest of the time, unless you want to try and grab an achievement or two. I did intentionally lose 1 million credits at one point, as I could afford to do so, and there was an achievement for doing exactly that. On that, while I'm not saying that Steam achievements should necessarily count for a huge amount, I think in genres such as roguelikes they give a decent idea of how much there is to actually do in the game. Space Warlord Baby Trading Simulator launched with 40 of those, and I think it speaks for something that the only 2 I didn't unlock were the one that was bugged at the time of playing, and the one which requires you to stay in game for a single 3-hour session. For reference, my total time played to complete everything else was a little over 3.5 hours. Maybe I'm just unusually good at the game and got through it really quickly. There had to be something out there I was good at, and a cursory glance at some of the user reviews on Steam does show plenty of players with significantly more hours on record, but it did make the entry price of $17 at a 15% discount seem pretty steep relative to the amount of content that was on offer. That's not to say that the time spent wasn't fun, it definitely is while you've got an objective that you're trying to complete, but it certainly left me feeling like there ought to have been more. Which is actually where the interesting part of this game's release comes in, because there certainly will be more. Considerably more, in fact. There's a sort of semi-live service aspect with, to quote Strange Scaffold, at least 2 months of free updates still to come. The roadmap for the first 3 weeks of that include 4 new campaigns, a new game mode, and a daily challenge mode, meaning that 3 weeks after launch, Space Warlord Baby Trading Simulator will have pretty much doubled up on the amount of content it offers, with plenty more to come in subsequent weeks. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. I have to admit that I'm the sort of person who acts like they're deathly allergic to early access titles, which this feels kinda tangential to, so I might have a bit more of an issue with it than most. I'm sure there's some sort of parallel someone cleverer than me could draw between investing in one of these space babies and investing in this game. Arguably, it's not worth it right this second, but its value should go up, and I think it will have certainly reached that point by the time those 2 months of additional content have been added. For what it's worth, at time of publication, the first week of that will have already come out, so you've already got 2 more campaigns available than I did when I played it. I imagine that I will want to go back and play those, along with the rest of the new content as it's released on a weekly basis. The fact that not everything's out yet does make it a little difficult to stick a number on this review. To revisit early access titles for a second, that's precisely the reason that I don't review those. It feels unfair to pass a final judgment on a product that isn't claiming to be the finished article. Were this a developer with a less extensive, proven back catalogue, I would probably be a bit more apprehensive about recommending it, but I do have faith that Strange Scaffold will see that the game grows into something significantly meatier over that 2-month update window. For all I know, things like that extra game mode will revolutionise the title, and make it a must-play which would get a significantly higher rating than this. But for now, Space Warlord Baby Trading Simulator is a fun, if not short experience, which is awarded a solid 7.5 out of 10 by IndieLoupe.